Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review and my thoughts on a trilogy of low budget horror films that were made for YouTube and made for fun. And they are the Warrensdale films. So far, it's a trilogy. Who knows? There might be more in the future. That's why I have just limited it to a trilogy for now, and also to a series of films, and not just a trilogy in general. But I didn't really have a lot of expectations for these, except for, hey, it's a low budget thing. It's something that some people made for fun, and they were not too bad. I'm not gonna say that I loved any of these films and that I would watch them again anytime soon, but I definitely did get some enjoyment out of them, and I did appreciate um, a few aspects of these films. So I think when it comes to this kind of entertainment, I have seen far worse than something like the Warrensdale films. I mean, this is in a lot of ways one step above your average student film, but I've seen actual films that have been released in theaters that had more of a budget, that had a lot more resources, and they wound up becoming so much harder for me to ultimately sit through than this series of films. So, before I get going, though, I want to give a special shout out to Slayer for requesting my thoughts on these films via Patreon. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The links to all three are in the video description down below, and I will try to get your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, the Warrensdale series of films starts out with the first film, The Warrensdale Mystery. And this film came out in 2021. And it's directed by Chris J. Lara, who I think directed all three of these. It's written by Chris, Anthony Serrano, and Ollie Torian. And it stars Bessie Amato, Elijah Davis, Nikki Hirchak, Anthony Johnson, Chris J. Lara, um, Sean Morris, Julio Rosado, Anthony Serrano, Sean Shillingford, and Ollie Torian. And the Warrensdale Mystery is, in a lot of ways, a mockumentary of sorts. It's like a pseudo true crime documentary about a series of disappearances involving these three men who disappeared while they were having a bit of a vacation at some cabin in the woods in Warrensdale. And these three men, Damien, Troy, and I believe I think the other one is Omar. So Omar, Damien, and Troy, they wound up going missing. And so the documentary is like a investigation into their disappearance, as well as this other case that popped up while the investigation was going on with this man named John Jane, who wound up being found uh, after his own disappearance, dead near the cabin. And it's like an hour and 7 minutes, and most of it is purely compromised out of interviews, like interview footage from different people who are being put in front of the camera to talk about the three friends that disappeared, their friendship with them, or their connection with them in other ways. And then there's also a detective who's interviewed, and you get his opinion of the case. And there's like a narrator who's narrating things and trying to keep the audience up to speed in terms of what is going on with this case. And to me personally, even though this is not the most involved film in this series when it comes to the direction or the cinematography or things like that, because it's really trying to be more like a low budget true crime documentary. This one was the best one to me. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I genuinely found the mystery to be interesting. And on top of that, I think the acting was at its most authentic and at its best when it comes to the interview segments in this part of the Warrensdale series. Um Especially from the actor who was playing the detective, Mitch Donovan. He was so good. I thought he was legitimately actually a real detective. Uh, and the rest of the interview cast was fine as well, but I would probably say he was the biggest standout. And the writing to me was also better here because it just really played out in a way that felt very true and very genuine and legitimately like it's some YouTube documentary about an actual case, an actual series of disappearances and a potential murder case involving John Jane. And the twists and the turns in the case were really well handled as well when it comes to the writing. Uh, the whole stuff with John Jane is not revealed until I think like over like halfway into the documentary, so it keeps you sucked in. And there is a supernatural element that's being hinted at with people talking about uh, uh, weird occurrences or there's like video footage of Troy talking about uh some mysterious figure called Dawn and saying that people need to come to Dawn. And there's this photo of a mirror that has some blood on it and a smiley face and the same phrase. And there are some other updates that are kind of sinister and when it comes to the potential of why these three went missing or how they could still be alive and what happened to John Jane. And to me personally, this series works the best when it is taking the less is more approach, when it is more subtle when it comes to its mystery elements, and when the supernatural stuff is not as prevalent or as let's just say in your face as it is later on in some of the other films in the series. Because I didn't really see this turning into what it ultimately became as a series. I could see a little bit of some supernatural stuff, but I didn't really see it going fully into that direction, like what the series ultimately does with the second and the third installments. But I would say if you like true crime documentaries or just true crime in general and mysteries, I think the Warrensdale Mystery is worth a watch. I really do if you're into that kind of stuff. You have to keep in mind, though, as well, it is a very low budget production. So the production values aren't going to be on par with some of the stuff that you've seen before, either from other YouTubers or definitely on network television or cable TV or streaming services when it comes to a true crime documentary or an episode of a true crime series. because there are some issues with like the audio and the sound mix, and there's some other things that do make it look a little bit amateurish in comparison to some of those other things. But a lot of that I think is unavoidable because of the fact that this is a very low budget production made uh honestly in a lot of ways just for the love of making films and trying to tell a story. And so a lot of that isn't always going to have the best and the most spectacular production values. But I think it makes up for it with some charm and with a genuinely compelling and interesting mystery. So, yeah, I actually would say, even though I didn't love the Warrensdale Mystery, I did like it. I can't really say the same about the next two installments, to be perfectly honest. The second installment in the Warrensdale series is called Keep Smiling, The Grinning Man Murders. This one is also directed by Chris J. Lara, written by Chris J. Lara, Anthony Serrano, and Ollie Torian. And it stars Joe Falcone, Chris J. Lara, Anthony Serrano, Sean Shillingford, and Ollie Torian. I think there's just a few other people who are also featured in it, but really a lot of it I think features more of Chris and his contributions to the film. And I think he's really more of the main actor here. And this is where you're introduced to a different character in Hector Morales, and he has some ties to Omar and Damien De La Vega, the two brothers that went missing, who were focused on throughout the Warrensdale Mystery. And this one, this features, in my opinion, way too much filler. Uh, After watching all three of these, that is a pretty common thing for me. And it makes me think that maybe these ideas and these concepts would have been better as like one big movie instead of three different separate films. But this one in particular has a lot of moments in it that just didn't really click with me as much. The direction is okay. It's fine for the kind of movie that this is. The writing, though, I don't really understand the whole YouTubers talking about the Grinning Man and Indrid Cold and this other guy talking about Warrensdale and some cult. I don't understand that when it comes to its place in the film and the narrative. It just seems like it's something that's thrown in there to pad the running time. Like the whole thing with the guy talking about Injured Cold in particular really lost me. The other bit with this other YouTuber, this guy wearing like a plaid shirt who's like talking about some cult, the Hyksos. Well, I don't know if it was a cult, but it was a group of people from history called the Hyksos, and they came in and essentially took over whatever was left from the Empire of Egypt when Egypt fell, and they apparently worshipped these deities called the Old Ones. And I will give the writers credit here. They do take elements of H.P. Lovecraft, specifically the Dunwich Horror, and they combine it with history, with the Hyksos cult, and the Hyksos people in a way that is genuinely fascinating. And it really does show a legitimately a good amount of research. And that's also where you get the Dawn stuff, which is like the Dawn Mother and the Grinning Man, who is this demon. That was like Yog Sothoth or something. And so you have a lot of extra details are revealed in this documentary, and well, I don't know if it's really documentary in this film, because this isn't as really a documentary like the first one was. So I think that's another reason why I was a little disappointed by it. It's more of an experimental story with a little bit of found footage and some other elements that are just very experimental in terms of trying to tell the story, tell the tale, like random advertisements from television, uh, which makes you think you're watching a TV broadcast, and then the broadcast being interrupted by a mysterious voice who is like a prominent figure in the Warrensdale community, who I guess you can kind of piece together could be the Grinning Man or Indrid Cold. And it's like an hour and 17 minutes, and it feels like there's not even close to enough material for an hour and 17 minutes. I just have to be perfectly honest. And I think if stuff was a little shorter, cut down a little, condensed, made a little tighter, I think this would be better and would be a much more cohesive and interesting watch for me. I think also if it was just copying the same formula as the first film and start instead of trying to just be another experimental sort of hybrid of found footage and whatever other types of storytelling that it attempts to put out there. This is another instance of less is more is better, like a more stripped down bare style for the film, I think would be a lot more efficient overall than this smorgasbord of different types of techniques and different types of storytelling that this particular film utilizes. It does have its strengths, though. I do like a lot of the vlog footage that's recorded by Damien when he's talking about the Dawn Mother and the Grinning Man and all this other stuff. And I do like the attention to detail when it comes to the history, the Hyksos, and to also a lot of things involving H.P. Lovecraft. But I have to admit, like after a certain point, it started to lose me because of the YouTuber stuff, where some just random YouTubers talking about a certain a supernatural or unexplained topic. And then you have a little bit of a connection to some of the people that were in the first movie, like Damien, as well as the detective who gets a creepy message at the end of this. And you also have the stuff with Hector and how he's connected to everything. And you do see the grinning man at one point, but it's clearly just a guy in a mask that he got from Party City, like a grinning zombie mask. It looks pretty cheap. Um, and maybe it's an instance of trying to do too much. I don't know, but like this just didn't really work for me. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really understand the advertisements from television that were spliced in. It didn't really tell that strong of a narrative because a lot of it just seemed like a lot of it was just giving you an info dump, so to speak, on the direction this series was going in, which is being more of a homage to H.P. Lovecraft. And I think there was probably a little bit of that in the first film in the series, but it wasn't as clear and as common and as consistent as what's going on in the Grinning Man murders. But it still left things off in a way that had me intrigued. I mean, I did want to see further mysteries involving the Warrensdale cast of characters and just seeing for myself like what is going on in Warrensdale and how it all connects to H.P. Lovecraft. And that leads to the third film in the series, Warrensdale Cold of the Dreamer. Keep Smiling, by the way, it came out like 2023. And the third film in the series came out a year ago in 2024. And Cold of the Dreamer is it's my least favorite out of the series. Like the second one, I had issues with it. I felt that it was a little too boring, and because of a lot of the YouTubers talking about a Wikipedia page about some of these different mysteries and some aspects of the vlog and the ranting by Damien got a little old after a certain point. Uh, but at least it was going into a direction that was genuinely compelling, and I did want to see what what everybody was going to do, like what the writers were going to do with this, what the director was going to do with this, in terms of how they were going to utilize the H.P. Lovecraft elements. And this is in a lot of ways just kind of like an update to the events of Warrensdale, and barely even that at all. And it's honestly kind of a disappointing, especially when it comes to the fate of a certain character who, in my opinion, was the best character. Like, I really like the detective guy. Mitch Donovan to me was the best and the most intriguing character in this series. And then in this particular installment, he gets killed off in a way which I think is just more for shock value than necessarily a way that he went out that I felt was worthy of his character, because I really grew to like that character, and I like that actor and his performance. And then he winds up showing up in this, and he's lost his job at the precinct or at the FBI or wherever he was working at, and he's disgraced, and then he winds up getting killed in the end by this cult. This is an installment that does provide some extra stuff, some new details, some new developments, but still doesn't really solve the mystery. Well, I guess it kind of does, because you find out the mystery was really just something that was tied into the old gods, the old ones, the H.P. Lovecraft demons, and the town of Warrensdale, or the city of Warrensdale, is just a mecca for the macabre. And there's this battle going on with these two old gods, and there's a lot of people in the town who are praising their creator, which is the dreamer, which I think is Azeroth. And so you have a lot of footage of people saying praise Azeroth, and speaking to the camera as if they're shooting vlogs for the internet, talking about their day, and then praising this god. And there are some new characters that are here. Some of the people who live in Warrensdale, and they wind up becoming involved in I think Donovan's death, because Donovan winds up getting pulled out of whatever hole he was in by this investigator who I guess was involved with the previous two films, and was considered to be, I think, maybe the director of them, or some guy who was very heavily involved in the production, and he was very passionate about this Warrensdale mystery, and he wants to solve it once and for all. And so he gets Donovan to help him, and they go to Warrensdale, and then it just doesn't end well. They see evidence of cult activity, and Omar makes a reappearance, which I didn't mind that. That was a nice development. But there's a lot of stuff in this that just feels like it's a bunch of nothing, really. I got a bunch of interviews with random people speaking to the camera, talking as if the old gods are real, and it just, I guess, it's trying to be creepy in a way, because they're just so nonchalant about how they're talking about these demons and these old ones, and praise Azeroth, and but it just came across as more silly to me. It's like this series got worse to me as it became more and more focused on the supernatural, and that was more of the focus, instead of it being a little bit more grounded in reality, and like the first film in the series. And this is very evident, like at the end, when some guy is complaining about his eyes hurting, and then he's like freaking out and spazzing out on the floor, while there's like pretty low budget effects that are thrown at him. And I liked the development of Omar returning, but other than that, like, I just didn't really care for a lot of the stuff in this particular installment, especially not this weird thing where there's this almost disclaimer at the beginning where it's all talking about how, hey, that previous documentary was unsanctioned or something, and we're the creators of the first film in the series, and we didn't really support that, and but we're doing this because we got some footage that's disturbing that was sent to us, and there's this guy who I think it seems like he's trying to be like some kind of form of a host of the show, like Robert Stack and Unsolved Mysteries, which I I I don't mind, but it just felt awkward in terms of like the way that things were structured with this film, because it just made the entire film just feel so much more scattered when it comes to his storytelling. And then you have this thing where he breaks the fourth wall at the end and is like, I guess, acting as if he's a character other than just being the host of this show, within the overall lore of Warrensdale and the story of Warrensdale. And I don't know, I felt that was a bit much as well. I would have just preferred the guy to just be a host and not much more than that. But I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the overall ambition. You can definitely tell that the director and other people behind these films are really starting to hit their groove more in terms of creating short films with a little bit more polish. But I think the writing could definitely use a little more work. And I think if you're going to make more of these Warrensdale films, I think it might be a good idea to go back to the more less is more approach of the first film. And it's fine. Okay, you want to have blood, you want to have more violence, you want to have more of these kind of things. You want to be more outrageous, wild, creepy, weird, strange. I understand, but I think because of the fact that the budget is so low, you can't really pull a lot of that larger than life, old god, demons stuff off that well. So maybe just focus on stuff happening behind the scenes, or people being possessed or something, or just stuff that doesn't rely upon Halloween store masks or uh effects that you add in post, like electricity effects or some of these other things that it's trying to do. And I think that focusing more on telling a good cohesive story first and foremost with strong characters, I think that's really what the focus should be, instead of the concepts and the ideas, because I think that's really what a lot of this series has become so far to me. Is it's a smattering of ideas and concepts, and some of them are interesting and some of them show promise, but not all of them are as interesting as others, and not all of them are as promising. Some of them seem to be more throwaway. So that's why this particular segment of the series was so slow to me, because I just wasn't that invested in this version of the story that it was trying to tell. And I didn't really feel like a lot was happening that I felt was particularly that great or that good or that interesting, other than maybe like a couple new developments here and there with the city and or the town of Warrensdale. But either way, it still had its moments. Like, none of these films were bad in a way where nothing worked and everything was terrible and everything sucked. So I definitely have to give, Penalty of Death Productions, who made these films, a lot of credit in that regard. They made three films that had potential, had some intriguing concepts and ideas. Not all of them were necessarily executed as well as they could be. And I wouldn't really say that all three of them were on the same level of quality, but you could get something out of them. There was never a moment where I got nothing out of them. And for something that is made on such a low budget and has all these limitations that come from making such a low budget films or projects, that's a sign of not only some talent, but also a sign of some quality filmmaking and quality production overall, despite a lot of the things that more than likely were holding the people back when it comes to making these movies, because it easily could have just been outright dog shit and terrible, and there's little to no redeeming qualities whatsoever about any of these. But that wasn't the case at all for me. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about these Warrensdale films, except if you like H.P. Lovecraft, if you like true crime documentaries, um, I think these are worth a watch sometime, at least once, just to check them out, see some of the ideas, and see some of the concepts that the people behind these films have in mind, and also to support, some indie filmmakers and storytellers, some guys who were trying to make some stuff on the cheap, but from the heart. And I think in today's day and age, where there's just so many films that are just turned out on streaming services and put out in theaters with really not that much thought or that much heart into them, I think it really is a good thing to support people like this, who put their selves out there and put their souls into these projects, whether or not they wind up working or not. There definitely is a certain amount of appreciation that you can have for somebody who's willing to put this much time and effort into making short films and to making projects like this, even if the end result is not as many views on YouTube and not as many accolades. And I think a lot of it is more due to, we made these for the love of these stories and the love of filmmaking. And I think there's a lot of people who work in the film industry in particular today who could tap back into that. And I think that could really help a lot of films nowadays. Tapping back into that mindset of just making stuff for fun and not making it for any sort of ulterior motive, or making it to preach to the audience about some kind of specific issue or politics. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Warrensdale films. Uh, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.